Welcome, welcome, welcome to this live call. I'm Astrid, I'm the founder of the ARC, and the ARC is this international mastermind for impact and purpose-driven individuals that want to use their talents, passions, and values to build something that inspires themselves and others. And we're pretty serious about this. You know, our alumni found their own businesses, they take the next step in their corporate career, they write their own books, whatever it is. It's an exciting community that will have a lot of crazy members who are just so committed to challenging, supporting, coaching, and inspiring you. If that sounds like something for you, sign up on the link below on the Coffeechat for 45 to 60-minute free coaching, where we will find out together with you what is your bottleneck and whether the ARC can support you. Now, having said that, let's dive right into this call because we've got a lot to cover. Let's get started. What we will learn in the course of this little call, and this is something I'm very excited about because I really was diving into all the models on coaching that I had and that I know and that I'm applying, and was facing the challenge of having to really, boil them down to their essence. So, these sort of 17-step models are now boiled down to something that has 3 steps. And I'm very excited to share it with you because you will understand how simple it really can be to help someone else transform their challenge into an actionable homework. So let's see what we've got on the table. First thing, 1 basic techniques and the mindsets that coaching involves. Then we're going to talk about 1 technique that you can apply to others. So to explain this a bit more in depth, what I mean by that is 1 technique on how you can apply coaching in a team setting, although nobody is a certified coach. So this thing works, even though if everyone is in the room is definitely not certified, but especially people don't even have to be pretty talented. So, and third of all, we'll answer your questions. We do have to admit that we did have to make a little bit of a selection, so we hope that the outcome is still representative of what you guys really wanted to know. So, let's get started. And the first question we need to answer is, what kind of coaching are we actually talking about? Because oftentimes there's this vague fear in the room that it's going to get very esoteric or spiritual and weird. And here's the thing, you don't have to worry. It's going to be very, very practical, very hands-on. First thing. So what is our personal definition of coaching? The way that we love to look at it is that it's a structured conversation where a coach sets the frame, asks the questions for a coachee to really get the necessary insights that brings this person from a situation where he or she only sees a challenge into actionable and clear homework. And I know that might have been a bit of a lengthy way of explaining it, so I like to think of a couple of keywords where we'd say structured conversation, coach and coachee. And the process that the coachee is going through is that he or she is turning anything, any perceived challenge through a series of insights into really good, actionable homework. I hope that sounds logical for you. And if yes, let's dive into a bit more mindset, let's say, assumptions, presuppositions, things that we like to believe when we coach people. And upfront, I want to say the nature of these mindsets is in a way that I wouldn't say they're always true all the time, but believing that this is true makes your coaching so much more effective. And you can have hours and hours of talk about those. And so I'm going to make it really short. If you're an experienced coach, let me know in the comments if you agree with this or if you feel that different mindset rules or presuppositions maybe should have been picked. I'm very curious to hear from you because this is just my own best guess. So I picked 2 because I feel these are 2 that are the hardest to grasp for new coaches, as well as the 2 that you work on longest when you're already a pretty experienced coach. And the first thing is that you do not give advice. Why? Why is coaching not about giving advice? First of all, because, think about it yourself. When was the last time in your life that you received advice that was so brilliant that you actually acted upon it? And I'm not talking about technical advice here. You know, I'm not talking about how to make pea soup. I'm talking about life advice where you can go route A or route B and you basically, you know, don't know which situation is going to turn out better. Yeah, that's the first point. The second point about not giving advice is that by giving advice, you will, in the course of your coaching experience, understand how you are actually taking away the accountability and the responsibility of your coachee. So for instance, if you're just saying, hey, here's how you solve your challenge, and then your coachee does it, but they will not do it maybe, you know, with the same level of enthusiasm that is required to really get it off the ground, and boom, there you have it, it's not working. Your coachee will come back to you saying, man, your advice is really bad, you know? So in order to prevent this from happening, help the coachee come up with their own ideas, yeah? And if you come in with advice, you know, mark this clearly as your advice, label it as your words of your thinking, which really doesn't have to be adopted by the coachee. So that's the first point. Resist the temptation of giving advice. And by the way, you will have a crazy amount of temptation when you start as a coach, but also when you are already an experienced coach. First point. Second mindset, we like to assume that the coachee has all the resources within them to achieve any desired change, because in the coaching world, desired change comes through behavioral change. And because everybody who is capable of changing their behavior, we assume at the same time that they have all the resources within them to achieve the stuff that they want. And I know it's for a lot of people to really like a weird thing to wrap their head around. And it definitely was for me as well. But, you know, over time, you really begin to realize how if you don't trust your coachee to do certain things, they will not believe in themselves. So that's why I put this second mindset presupposition assumption on there. For me, it's been one of the most powerful. And yes, as I said before, I know there are many more. I just keep it for there for now. Cool, next slide. Ta-da. The simplest way to coach. And this is now the big secret revealed of how we kind of boiled down those 17-step models to something that's really darn simple. The first big question really is always, what do you need coaching on? Why are you here? Yeah. And for me, from my experience, the most effective way of getting to great results in this phase is to try and figure out what is it that holds your coachee back from doing the obvious things, doing the stuff that they know they should have done already. So just to give a little example, when we are coaching people, oftentimes we ask them, what do you need coaching on? And they'll be like, I just don't know how X, Y, Z. This is, I would say, 90% of the cases were the answers that we're getting. And that's perfectly understandable. But then, you know, just ask for fun the question, so what would be 3 baby steps that you feel that you should be doing? And you might find that out of the blue, your coachee comes up with 3 very smart and obvious baby steps. And feel free to let your reaction be, wow. Are you sure that the how is the problem? I don't think it is. It just doesn't sound like it. It seems like that you know pretty well what you can be doing. And through that conversation, kick off an oftentimes more interesting conversation about how come that they haven't taken those baby steps yet. How come that, you know, it always kind of was postponed? How come that procrastination has become such a big thing as regards that particular topic, you know? Essentially, what has been holding you back? And this is when the real interesting stuff gets to surface. Usually people are fearful of something, and understanding how their fears are related to them not proceeding is a very, very, very powerful thing. So that is the first phase. Let's go to the next. What do you want? What do you actually want? So that usually boils down to 1 two things. It's overcoming the fear or not overcoming the fear. And I just want to highlight that overcoming the fear is great, but not overcoming the fear can also be a very adult reaction. If your coachee already understands that they are not ready to face something yet, I mean, that's perfectly fine, you know? So in that case, you can just ask, so what instead do you want? You know, what would be one thing that you want to do and you feel you can do right now to have a leap forward? First thing. So that is more about like combating the fear. On top of that, you can also talk about what is your vision, you know, what is like this positive, amazing thing? What is your why? Because, you know, oftentimes in order to combat that fear, we need to know why we are doing this. What is that better state that you're picturing once you've overcome that particular fear? And you can go all like SMART objectives, you know, make them, what is it? Measurable, achievable, I forgot, specific, yeah, timed, and all these things. No problem with that, but make sure that it's something that your coachee is actually excited about. So I like to ask, on a scale from 0 to 10, how excited are you about that particular thing? And the bigger the fear, the higher the level of excitement has to be. So if you feel that it's a pretty big fear, like don't settle for less than an 8. And if it's a 7, you can always ask, you know, if you say that's a 7, like how do we have to change this goal? How do we have to change this objective so that it becomes an 8 for you? So this is step 2. What do you want? Let's go one further. Steps and homework. And probably now you're beginning to understand how I am also so shocked that this is actually so simple. Yeah, it's really the last thing. You brainstorm solutions. How can you reach that goal? You know, and if you're into creativity techniques, go for it, you know, but also you can just make a list. Yeah. This is great to keep your coachee upbeat, and just really encourage them to come up with cool stuff that they feel they can implement. Brainstorm, and depending on how much time you've got, you know, I've had clients with who I just brainstormed 3-4 things, but also like at one point I brainstormed up to 100 solutions. And that's also something, by the way, we used to do on our retreats and bootcamps, to just brainstorm 100 solutions on the most unsolvable problem that you think you have in your life. And you will see how much of a powerful experience it is if you have 100 post-its in front of you that are telling you solutions to a problem that you thought you couldn't solve. Little side note. So have all these solutions, but also pick one thing as a homework. And I really mean homework, you know, like from school when you had to write down what is it that you have to do, and important, until when. I don't like homeworks that don't have a deadline. Let's keep it there. Yeah, homework. Last little trick, I love to create a little sense of accountability. So something along the lines of, well, by Monday 11 a.m., which is when you were supposed to hand in your homework, if by next Monday 11 a.m. I don't have an email from you with that particular PowerPoint that you wanted to prepare, what do you want me to do? Right? So create a little bit of accountability. So that can be a great incentive for your coachee to actually get that stuff done. Cool. So next point. Oh yeah, almost forgot about this. One thing that's really cool to think about is, what are good questions to ask in each phase? And what I mean by that is, you know, you can create your very own process at work, but also for yourself. There are so many wonderful situations where you can apply self-coachings. And yeah, just literally come up with your own questions. You will be surprised how inspiring it is to go through that curve, that process one time. With your own questions, and how you will force your brain into thinking from challenges into actionable homework. So just a little side remember thingy. Yeah, feel free to Google your brainstorm your own questions. Yeah, let's go to the next step, and this is team coaching. It's one technique that we totally love at the ARC, and it's called peer counseling. The great thing about peer counseling is, as I've said before, that you can get decent results even if there's no coach in the room. Here's how this works. Because the biggest problem is that this process that I've just outlined, this like 3-step process, in order for this to be really, really, really great and mind-blowing, you oftentimes have to actually be a pretty skilled coach. So I wanted to give you guys a method that has results even if you're not very skilled. Because I said the biggest challenges that the mindsets I've been talking about are rarely applied well and practiced by beginners, and that's perfectly understandable. And by the way, also people who have been in coaching for a very, very long time are getting this wrong, including myself. So hey, it's a journey. So here's how peer counseling works. The way we usually facilitate this at the ARC is you have 3 people. One is the person who's sharing a challenge, and we invite the person to share a challenge for 15 minutes. So this person needs to speak for 15 minutes without stopping. These guys are listening, to body language, to words, to really all the information they're getting. Listening, and especially they're listening once this person ends up in a loop. Chances are that within those 15 minutes, this person is going to be in some sort of loop. And that's actually great because that tends to be the area where you are just stuck in. So the cool thing is that, this person can just ask, and these people, because they need to shut up during the process, they can't ask any clarification questions. They, will just be the witness of the unfiltered stream of consciousness. So it's really a very good way to kind of dive into the deep psyche of that beautiful person. Cool. That's phase 1. Then, how am I going to make this with my fingers? This person sort of turns around, basically turning around and facing the other 2 people with the back. And this person now is in the both crazy but also wonderful situation that he or she has to listen to what these other people are telling behind his or her back. What do we mean? And what we usually do is we let these guys answer 3 questions. These guys answer 3 questions. First question, what is the real challenge? What is the silver lining? What is the real challenge that this person is actually facing? Feel free to, just literally, it's fine to give your opinion here, there, Second question, how does having this challenge benefit this person who's just shared the challenge? Why? I'm going to give you a little example from my own life to make it clear, because the basic assumption that this second question is built on is that humans make sense. Brains are pretty consistent. So if there is a negative pattern that pops up in our life as a challenge, and we do that again and again and again, there must be one massive benefit to this, So for instance, when I had my personal first peer counseling, the challenge I picked, and I was talking about, by the way, with my team was, look, everybody says on this team I'm so dominant and I'm just like, cutting off ideas, and that I'm educating dumb teams. So that was the challenge I was talking about. And then I turned around, and to my shock and to my desperation, they actually agreed. What was interesting though is when they came to question 2, when they were like, how does having this challenge and being so domineering benefit Astrid? And someone was very sweet saying, look, Astrid is just so scared of silence. She literally freaks out when she has to bear, the silence of her presenting a problem and nobody knowing any answer, especially when her fast brain already has it figured out. And then she has to sit back and has to listen to nobody knowing anything and people being confused. And so her natural inclination is to just jump in, but the problem with that is that she is making her teams dumb. And she is taking away from people the motivation to really participate. So that is the benefit of the of how having this challenge benefited me. I mean, I had the challenge of being domineering and not letting ideas flow from my team members, but the benefit that I still incurred, and that was for my subconsciousness, by far outweighing the challenge, was that I didn't have to face my fear of silence. So that is how the second question could be answered. Then we have a third question, and that is, what decision is that person facing? So in my case, it would have been, what would Astrid rather tolerate? Having teams where nobody dares to speak up, or come up with their own ideas, or facing her fear of silence. And it sounds like an obvious choice, but as said, we don't give advice. So once you've got these three questions answered, you leave 3 minutes maximum for the initial challenge presenter to write down their insights. Because actually, we recommend that while you are listening to your team members talking about your challenge, you don't write down anything, because it just literally distracts you sometimes. It doesn't have to, but can distract you from listening deeply. Yeah? And what we like to say is, if you have only one insight from this exercise, it's been worth your time. Yeah? So the important things tend to stick anyways. Cool. That's the whole exercise already. That's the whole magic. And what I love about it is it really, takes away from people the possibility to give advice while the challenge presenter is actually speaking, and separates, these phases of the challenge presenter speaking and the team members discussing. And there it's clear, it's their advice, and obviously, you don't tell necessarily which of the choices that the person is facing in the end is the preferred one. Well, sometimes it's easy and obvious, but I just love how with that technique, even people who have never been into coaching end up having pretty great results within their groups. So just a quick recap. Phase 1, the challenge presenter talks for 15 minutes, they turn around. The other two team members are then discussing the 3 questions, and the 3 questions are, what's the real challenge? How does having this challenge benefit the problem? And what choice is the challenge presenter facing? Then you discuss that for 15 minutes, and after that, the challenge presenter, writes down their insights in hopefully not more than 3 minutes. That's the technique. That's how peer counseling works. Again, write me in the comments below if you have any experiences with that. There are a lot of variations of this technique. For instance, one thing we also love to do is at the very beginning of this process, and it's really cool actually, that the team members also ask the challenge presenter, how honest do you want us to be on a scale from 0 to 10, where 10 is meaning very, very, very honest, and 0 being like, well, actually, when someone puts 0, you would probably ask, why are you even participating in this exercise? But the background to this question is that we don't always know the sort of psychological state that people are in, and sometimes they're willing to take potentially harsh feedback, and sometimes not, So yeah, I love that little thing, and as I said, there are a lot of variations. So with these words, I don't want to get too hung up on that slide. Let's go to the next. And that is the slide that is going to start tackling your questions. Let's start with the first. Dealing with a lack of motivation. We've had the questions from coaches asking around, how do you deal with my coachees just not being very motivated? And from experience, I can tell that there are 2 reasons. One is the goal isn't cool enough. Yeah, the goal isn't cool enough. They're just not sufficiently excited about the goal of the coaching process. That does not have to be your mistake at all. It might be someone your coachee might just be someone who commits to goals, although they're not exciting. And that's a problem. But that's not a problem that you have caused. So first of all, understand that this doesn't make you a bad coach. But also understand how you can free yourself out of that situation. Because the best way to probably handle this is to go back to the objective that you have set for the coaching process and just ask on a scale from 0 to 10, how excited are you? And if the person says 8, but you're not feeling an 8, feel free to share that feedback, right? and try to amend the goal in a way that it makes your coachee excited. First point. Second point, another explanation could be that your coachee has so much fear in them, yeah, that they have chosen for themselves homework steps that are too big. In other words, the bump they're trying to overcome, the wall they're trying to rip down is just too strong. And the reaction, the default reaction as a coach can be, it doesn't always have to be, but the one that is very often leading to success is that you decrease the magnitude of your steps. Because here's the thing, if your coachee is not doing the homework, it might just as well be that you've bumped into something really, really big, you know? And that is why it's important that your coachee's homework is not based on advice, but on the actual motivation of your own coachee, because, you know, they have to do it. And if they're, you know, you need their commitment, and it should not just and only be your commitment for having them getting something done. So in practice, you know, not doing the homework looks maybe like a lack of motivation, but really masks a very big fear. And we will talk a little bit later with another question about how that can be incorporated in better ways. But the one thing I want you to take away is, don't feel like you're a bad coach just because your coachee is losing motivation. It's not necessarily your job as a coach to keep your coachee motivated. Look, it's their experience as well. You know, if they choose to, you know, again and again not listen to the feedback that their body is giving them when they're not doing the homework, let them go through their experience and let them have that feedback. And let them lead that negotiation with their reptile brain. Like, how much pain are you willing to bear before you will finally change something about that fear of yours? Yeah? And again, I'm not saying this is true for all of the cases, but in my experience, it has been true for a vast majority of cases. Next question. What if my boss is a poor coach? I really had a lot of fun with this, because probably I'd have to make another video about this, about how to lead from the second line. But it brings me to one important principle, and that is you cannot coach anyone without consent. And what I mean by that is if someone doesn't want to be coached, it's going to be very hard for you to coach someone. You know, you're basically going to be projecting your own reality onto them and end up giving advice. You know? So what can you do? You know, if your boss is a poor coach, the one thing that has worked in my experience is to literally forget about what you're thinking and just try to imagine what are incentives for your boss to change their behavior. So really try to understand what behavior they need to change, how it should look like, and then how do you communicate this. And from experience, there are two things that corporate bosses, let's just say, assume this is in the corporate world, are excited about. You know, one thing is they want to be liked by their employees, and the second thing is they want to have a great bottom line so that they can be promoted, be recognized, and have all these awards and stuff, rewards and awards. So try to understand what's the lingo that your boss is speaking, and try to present the challenge that you're seeing in their words. So for instance, if you have someone who really wants to improve the bottom line, the performance of the team, you might just want to give feedback in a way that, look, what I've observed is that if this and this happens, the team actually performs worse. And hope that through changing your communication, you might get through. I also know that this is something that's really, really hard to pull off. So if you have a boss that is really, really convinced that only his or her reality is the one that counts, it's going to be tough, eh? So I'm not having like great recipes for this question, I'm afraid, apart from the ones that I've already mentioned. So that's the second question. And now the third, which I absolutely love. Can I coach myself to improve on habits that I am really bad at, what about accountability? And I actually want to read out the question because I think there's a lot to it. The question was, my thoughts wander around accountability and discipline a lot. How do I hold myself and others accountable for their and my decisions made during coaching? I feel like it comes down to the question, how actively do I welcome and pursue change in my life and support others to do the same? Especially if it comes to habits that are hard to change, those pesky little things. Wink. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this. Yeah, and I'm excited to share because I think you've touched upon such a cool and important matter. So it's like accountability and lack of motivation are sort of two, clouds that are masking fears. And basically, the point I'm trying to make is this. We might experience that our coachees are not bringing the accountability to the table that is needed to get their stuff done. But what's really happening, and by the way, I don't know if that is always true, but I love to think about it this way, is that oftentimes, our rational brains and our irrational part of our brains are sort of going at very different speeds, right? And I love the example of people trying to lose weight. Rationally, we know that eating another burger is the one thing that's not going to lead us to more fitness and a better body. However, irrationally, we are like just craving for food. Guess who's winning? Large majority of the cases, I'm going to eat the next burger. And if we understand or buy into the idea that this is what's really going on, we're going to be able to solve those deadlocks much more easily. How? So, first of all, acknowledge that a lack of accountability is not necessarily a coachee saying no to your coaching process, or even worse, saying no to you. Probably that really isn't what's happening. Instead, try to understand that coaching is so self-directed that if people stop doing their homework, or if people stop calling you back, or if their commitment just sort of disappears, understand that because it's so self-directed, you will at times witness directly the negotiation that is going on between their rational brain and their irrational parts, right? And try to think it of as from that sort of perspective. And I like to think about sort of 3 steps in which you can solve that deadlock. First step is to name the drama and to surface the underlying game that's going on. Second is to understand and acknowledge the fear that is behind, and I will explain later why I'm thinking it's a fear. And third is to incorporate that into your homework of your coaching and make your homework better. So let's go through those steps. First thing, name the drama. And it's literally just authentically sharing what your observation is of the behavior of your coachee. And it could just be the following words. Look, I'm observing that you haven't done your homework, although last week you were so enthusiastic about doing just that. What happened? And most of the time people will come saying, I didn't have time. If that feels like an authentic and true remark of your coachee, feel free to go with it. However, in most of the cases, you might be like, yeah, no. And if that's your reaction, I encourage you to follow that, because most of the time, not having enough time isn't the right answer to your question. And you can share authentically by saying, look, I understand that you're saying you didn't have enough time. However, I'm very curious because last week you said you're going to make it a priority. Has your mind changed? I'm not sure it has, but I'm curious because I'm assuming that you are this very smart person and that you do things with a reason. So I am assuming that there must be something big that's holding you back. So what are you scared of? What terrible thing is happening if you have to crack on with the homework that you committed yourself to do? And most of the time this gives you some sort of like dark oomph, because most of the times you'll be hitting upon something that's deep and a little bit heavy. So hold that space and then go to step number 2, acknowledge the fear. I like to, from experience, I am learning that what's holding people back is fear. It's not necessarily a lack of clarity or not knowing how to do things, but it's not daring to leave their comfort zones. And it is that there's a very uncomfortable feeling creeping up while they're thinking about the action of having performed their particular homework. Finding that feeling is powerful. And you don't have to solve it in your coaching conversation, you know. You oftentimes, this is something that's big, goes back to childhood, whatever. Yeah. But the one question that I like is, and now we go to step number 3, turn that into a homework, is, look, fear asks us, what do I have to pay attention to? And let your coachee come up with ways to make their homework easier. Yeah. So this last question that's been asked, can I coach myself to improve on habits, is actually a practical example of how you might want to make your steps smaller because your coachee is not having the desired results because of some sort of fear. And basically these are those 3 steps how you can approach if you're stuck with that last question that's down on the slide. So one more time, name the drama, make it transparent, make the game transparent, acknowledge the fear that's behind it, and don't chicken out on admitting that it's maybe big. Yeah, and then integrate this into your homework and go from there. So yeah, I hope this was useful to you. This is the last slide, and as you know, as I've been saying before, the ARC is this incredible organization, that's organizing these retreats and bootcamps across Europe. And if you feel that you're someone who craves for more impact, for more growth, and who wants to use their talents, passions, and values to actually build something that knocks you out of your socks, do dare to contact us for a coffee chat. We have gotten the link below, thearc.site/coffeechat, where if you click on that, you'll be getting in touch with us for a 45 to 60-minute free coaching where we'll find out, what's holding you back and whether or not the ARC's the right program for you. So with these words, I'm so excited to hear from you soon again. Thank you so much for being on board with us until now. And yeah, we're seeing you soon with more videos and more exciting content here or on Facebook. Bye-bye.